Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Hadith Disciple Critical Book Review. The work that we have with us today is a bit special and a bit unique. We normally study specific or books, works that were originally authored in the English language exclusively. Very rarely or every now and then we've done a few translations from Arabic into English, and we've judged the translation, critiqued the translation, shed light upon a translation in the service of the book, the editing, the citation, etc. And every now and then, I believe it was a few books that we've done in Medina, in which we spoke about Arabic books. Not translations, but written in Arabic and remaining in Arabic. And that is going to be our review today. The review right now is not necessarily going to be critical because, as we said before, the channel or the playlist, the book reviews are not made to critique Arabic works, nor are they made originally to critique translated works from English and from Arabic into English. They're made to critique books that were written exclusively in English. But every now and then we go out of the way. So therefore, we're going to discuss this book here in Arabic, and we're not necessarily going to critique it critically. We're just going to shed some light on its benefit, its value, and how it can help the disciple or the disciplet who speaks Arabic or speaks Arabic and English, or a little bit of Arabic with mostly English. And the name of the book is called أطلس الحديث النبوي. أطلس الحديث النبوي من الكتب الصحاح الستة أماكن أقوام للدكتور شوقي أبو خليل. The name of the book is called, it says on the back, Atlas of the Prophetic Traditions. Atlas al-Hadith al-Nabawi by Dr. Shawqi Abu Khalil. Dr. Shawqi Abu Khalil, his book is called Atlas al-Hadith al-Nabawi. Obviously, Atlas meaning an atlas of the prophetic hadiths. And on the back in English is a bit lacking because the front cover gives us more detail. And that this atlas is based off of the 6 authentic books of hadith, the author says. As-Sihah Sitta, meaning the 6 mother books of hadith. Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Jami' Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan An-Nasa'i, and Sunan Ibn Majah. So it's a very unique, special, spicy type of book flavor that we have right now. We have geographical locations, dates, cities, towns, continents, countries, but only based off of the narrations that are found in these 6 books of hadith. Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and Nasa'i. And then, even more finely detailed, he says, Amakin Aqwam. He says, places and people, or peoples. Places and people. And the doctor, or the author, is Dr. Shawqi Abu Khalil. So first and foremost, the book is approximately 437 pages, roughly. Approximately 437 pages. The book was printed in... it says Darul Fikr al-Mu'asir and also Darul Fikr. 2 publishing houses, not necessarily printing, 2 publishing houses, Darul Fikr al-Mu'asir and Darul Fikr, the notorious Darul Fikr. Now, which is, the first one is located in Beirut, Lebanon, and the second is narrated, or located, not narrated, in Damascus, Syria. Damascus, Syria. It says here, on the initial cover or the sleeve, that this book was printed in 2003 of the Gregorian calendar. Now, the first print. And it says Al-I'adatu Rabi'ah, which means the 4th photocopy. Al-I'ada. They did it again. They repeated the original print. And it's not a new typesetting, which is in 2007. 2007, which is equivalent to the prophetic hijrah to 1428. Tayyib. So that's where the book was printed. That's when the book was printed. On the back of the book it says here, جاءت فكرة هذا الأطلس المتمم لمجموعة الأطالس الإسلامية التي أصدرتها الدار جاءت من واقع حياتنا اليومية فبين الآونة والأخرى يطلب من المؤلف أحد زملائه أو طلابه تحديد موقع مر معه في كتب سياح الحديث فيرسم له مصورا يحدد عليه الموقع المطلوب مما دفعه إلى سني هذا الكتاب الذي يلبي حاجة ملحة. He says here on the back, the excerpt, it says that the idea for this book, the idea for this atlas, it came based off of a bigger idea or bigger ideas. And there were other Islamic atlases that were done. Whether it's an atlas just for Mecca and Medina, for example, or an atlas just for Sham, or an atlas for the areas of Hajj, or an atlas for for example, the Futuhat, the Islamic conquest, or the battles, etc. An atlas of the Prophet Sirah. And then this came completing that series. It then says here, and this came from our daily lives, our daily experiences and needs. He says there were times which people would come to the author, and they would, whether they're his friends, his students, and they would ask him to point out a place that they read in one of the books of hadith. Where is this place in Sahih Bukhari that I read? The Prophet had this battle. The Sahaba passed by this lake. This woman came from this town, this country. Where is that at? So they would ask the author to do this. It then says here, and he would illustrate for them, and he would draw for them the initial place. And then that made him to compile it, to put it together, to complete it, and to perfect it, and fulfill this major need for the people to have the geographic accuracy, what they read about in the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ in those 6 books. It then says, يشير الأطلس إلى أماكن وجود الأقوام والأماكن التي ذكرت في الحديث النبوي الشريف خلال صحيح البخاري ومسلم وأبي داود والنسائي والترمذي وابن ماجه بحيث يخصص مصورا مناسبا يوضح المكان المطلوب وبلون متميز. It says this atlas, it points out and it steers in the directions to the peoples, the tribes, the places, the nations, the towns, the cities, the countries, the continents that are mentioned in the prophetic hadiths. Mentioned in the prophetic hadiths, but only mentioned in those 6 mother books. Meaning that there have to be in one of those 6 books. Whether in all 6 and in other books as well, Muslim Imam Ahmad, or whether they're just in Bukhari and Sunan al-Nasa'i. Alright? So that's the condition of the book, okay? The author then says in the excerpt, we give a special illustration, a special map, clear and plain with colors, color-coded, where it's collected, where it can be found, so on and so forth. هذا ورتبت الأسماء الأماكن والأقوام على حروف المعجم لتيسير الوصول إليها إنه عمل جديد غير مسبق. It then says here, last but not least, these places and these people, they have been alphabetically ordered and organized, all right, and for it to be easier, people to access it easier, etc. He says, and this is a totally groundbreaking piece of work, they say. غير مسبق. Totally unconventional. No one has done the work that we have done here. This is what they say. An interesting fact, I picked up this book, I believe I was in Toronto, Canada, a few years back. I believe it was me and a few of my friends in Canada. I believe it was Sheikh Abu Omar Abdulaziz and also my close friend, Brother Samir. We were in a bookstore and I picked up this book, if I'm not mistaken. طيب. So that's when the book was printed, where it was printed, the excerpt from the book, where I purchased the book, so on and so forth. First and foremost, we have the introduction. The author, he gives a very, very deep and interesting introduction in which he talks about many things, much more than just geography. And he talks about things much more than just hadith. He talks about history. And he talks about one of the most important parts of the Islamic history, and I would say one of the most important things with regards to the modern day talk about Islam. Good or bad. Attacking Islam, defaming Islam, levying criticism against Islam, or just the praise of Islam. And that is the fighting, battles, and the conquests. The wars that were fought, the victors, those who lost, people that were subjugated, the flourishing, the falling of empires and dynasties, etc. And the author is very interesting here. Before he gets there, he talks about the 6 authors of hadith and how most of them were of non-Arabian ancestry and non-Arabian ethnicity. And he talks about Imam Malik. And he also talks about racism in Islam and tribalism and nationalism in Islam, and how Islam is not for one race or one nation or one people. It isn't just for Arabs. It isn't just for non-Arabs. It isn't just for the light or the dark, the red or the green. He says it's for everybody. Very interesting dialogue. Then he talks about the justice of Islam and how Islam, wherever it went, it brought good. and they brought light. And the people, in one way or another, flourished. They flourished. And there were schools, universities, institutes, laboratories, all types of places for medicine, astronomy, exploration, etc., that were made wherever the Muslims went. And he also talks about the concept, as we said, about the conquests. And when it actually was physical fighting and violence, and people lost their lives in abundance. He says, but the difference is that when the Muslim conquests were nothing like the non-Muslim conquests. And he talks about here genocide. He talks about genocide. And he talks about nations being wiped off the face of the earth. And he also, very amazingly, he talks about the hypocrisy of Western scholarship and Western academia, and how they attack Islam, or many of them, and they say that Muhammad was a killer, he was a murderer, he was bloodthirsty, he was a conqueror, he was a slave trader, and that's all, he traded with slaves and he took concubines and so on and so forth. And he discusses the hypocrisy of these people, and he talks about Europe and their conquests. He talks about how they destroyed countless nations. He mentions the African continent and the genocide of many African nations, people that were wiped out, totally enslaved, all of their property, their wealth, their gold, their diamonds being stripped from them and their countries being raped. And he also talks about the American conquests and the European settlers who destroyed many civilizations in South, Central, and North America. The author actually mentions this in detail in the Arabicized terms. He talks about the European settlers who destroyed 3 nations. He says, Al-Inca, Wal-Maya, Wal-Aztec. He talks about the Incans, the Mayans, and the Aztecs. And he talks about how there were, he says, 80 million. He says there were 80 million people also from the Red Indians. He says, Min al-Hunud al-Humur. The Red Indians who lost their lives and their population was totally decimated through disease, through sickness, and through just bloody warfare and conquest. He then says, فلا إنسانية ما شراها للوصول إلى الذهب والفضة فهنا كل القيم تنهار. He says there's no humanity with total savagery, savage behavior just to get gold and silver. He says when gold and silver is the main cause of the conquest, he says then there's no humanity, and all values and ideals of humanity would be thrown down the drain. And then the author talks about Australia, and he talks about the Aborigines, and he talks about the Tasmanians as well. Very interesting. And then he goes on to talk about the beauty of Islam and what Islam did when it was peaceful teaching, when it actually was a fight or war, a conquest, etc. Then he talks about these 6 authors, starting with Imam al-Bukhari. And then he also talks about here Al-Hafiz, the Hafiz of the Sahaba, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and his larger than life, his gargantuous contribution to the prophetic traditions and what he did and how many hadiths he narrated and how many hadiths he had memorized before he actually narrated them. And then he talks about the idea of the Atlas, how it was arranged, and he thanks Allah and he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he asks Allah to give him the ability to thank him. In the author, he mentions his email address and his website address. Very, 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 very beneficial introduction, full of all types of mind-stimulating facts and information. Then on page 11, the author, he talks about Imam al-Bukhari, his name, where he was born, and he talks about the current country, the equivalent to the ancient terminology. So he says, Mawliduhu Bukhara. He says, but nowadays Bukhara is Uzbekistan. There's no Bukhara. It's called Uzbekistan. So this helps you out. And then he talks about Wafatuhu Khartang, okay, where he died, the city of Khartang or the village of Khartang. And he talks about the beauty of him, the books that he wrote, so on and so forth. And then a very interesting thing, he gives an illustration. He says, Rihlatul Bukhari fi talab al-ilm. And this is something that just, only a true lover of hadith can respect and appreciate this. It just makes you shiver when you look at this, like, wow, in your face now. It actually illustrates where Bukhari traveled, okay? And it shows you where he went. Those red arrows. It says here, Khurasan, al-Iraq, Misr, al-Sham. And he says there's a key or a legend there. Makan al-Wilada, where he was born, is a red dot. Makan al-Wafa, an X is where he died. So we see it's in close proximity where he was born and where he died, between the red dot and the red X right there. That's the red dot, Bukhara, and the red X being Samarkand. Khartang. And then he has the red arrow. He says خط سير رحلتي ثم العودة إلى بخارى. And the red arrows show where he went and how he returned back to Bukhara. All right, and this is amazing right here. Then we have on the next page Imam Muslim as well, where he traveled, where he went. Okay, that's the African continent. That is the start in the Middle East, Arabia, Sham. All right, moving to different parts of Turkey, etc. Okay, the land of the Kurdish, etc. Then we have the Far East, Nishapur, so on and so forth, Persia. And then we have the same for Imam Abu Dawood as well, until the end of all of the 6 authors. Then after that, the author, he begins with the actual places. And you can see the generous, lavish, lush illustrations. Some of them in clear color, and their actual images as well. Current day pictures, some ancient pictures. The first country that he mentions, or the first land he mentions, is where Al-Abtah. It's called Al-Abtah or Al-Batha, which is mentioned in many hadiths. Al-Abtah. Obviously, Alif and Ba being the first in alphabetical order. Then after that, the last place that he mentions is, take a guess, is Al-Yemen. Ya and Mim. Yemen. And he shows here where Yemen is located. Some historical places in Yemen. Before that was Yamama. We all know the battle of Yamama, place in Yamama, Al-Yamami. All right? And here are the color codes where it can be found. Excuse me, as a correction. Yemen is the most the most well known, but it's another place, another location. He says Yuna. Yuna. Coming after, obviously Noon coming after Mim. So it says Yuna, and then it's colored in green, meaning that this is found in Bukhari. It's found in Bukhari. And he gives some references. Mu'jam al-Buldan, the encyclopedia of countries. Here, look at this place. It's Yemen. Yemen is color coded in all colors. Green is in all of them, because you can find a narration about Yemen in all 6 books. We get how it's used. Here, Ghayqa. Ghayqa is only in Muslim. Faris, all 6. Wahakaba. Wahakaba. We have some pictures, some illustrations, etc. Then after that is the index, or before the index is the bibliography. Al-Masadir wal-Maraji' is the bibliography, starting with Ustul Ghaba fi Ma'rifat al-Sahaba, and then ending with, says here, Wafa'ul Wafa' bi Akhbar Dar al-Mustafa, meaning the last one with Wa'. Then after that is the index of places, peoples, and actual people, or the personalities that he mentioned. This Imam, this scholar, this writer, this traveler, this warrior, etc. This seaman, etc. Then after that is the actual table of contents, al-muhtawa, etc. Then the last thing that we'll mention is not necessarily a notable quote, but it's something that's very interesting to me, and maybe you'll find it interesting as well. Please excuse me, I'm a bit overexcited, because the book is a really exciting book. He talks about a place in Saudi Arabia, and he talks about its historic importance and context, and that's why I used to live in Medina. That was my neighborhood, and that was the main street in which we used to live. If anyone sees this video from the brothers who lived in that apartment before me, or came after me, or the brothers that were there with me, whether they stayed with me, or they came to visit me, or to study with me, or to teach me in that apartment, they'll realize what it means to them as well. He says, Dhibab. The place, meaning the original term, is called Dhibab. All right? And it's in Sunan Abi Dawud in green. He says, Jabulun bil Madinatil Munawwara. It's a mountain in Medina. The word Dhibab is a mountain in Medina. He says, Bayn al-Sili' wa Thaniyat al-Wada' ala yamin al-Muttaji' ila al-Sham wa Sila' ala al-Yasar. Where this mountain is located. And then he says here, Uzil al-Jabalani wa Kusiyat al-Mantiqatu bil-Ama'ir Hayy al-Nasr. He says that these 2 mountains, they were taken away. The first mountain, he says here, Jabal bin Madina bayna Sila. He says here, first and foremost is Sila and Thaniyatul Wada'. He says, so the 2 mountains were removed, and then the metropolis or the city came. They built buildings and structures, and they called this neighborhood Hayyun Nasr, And that's the exact neighborhood that I used to live in. Hayy Nasr is a very famous neighborhood in Medina, in which many students of knowledge live. The entire neighborhood is not like this, but oftentimes it was the cheapest you could find for rent. You didn't have no money. You have a wife, you have kids, you have books. You have to get what you can get. So Hayy Nasr became like a major hub for students of knowledge in the Islamic University, especially in College of Hadith. So in most cases, most students that lived outside of the school, they had wives, had families, you either lived in Hayy Nasr or Ard Kurdi, which was across the street from Sultana. Sultana was the border. And obviously Ard Kurdi was a few notches up. It was a bit more money, a bit more lavish, and a bit more comfortable. Now, other students who got different lodging in other buildings, but that came a little later on. طيب. He then says here, بالمدينة المنورة حيث شارع أبي بكر الصديق سلطانة. And the word I just mentioned, the name of the street is called Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And then it mentions Sultana. So it's a famous street. You tell a cabbie, drop me off at Sultana. Or you ask the brother, where's your house? Or students are coming to see you, or a sheikh is coming to your house to do a telelink, or you're teaching him English, or whatever the case may be. And he says, where are you located? He says, where are you located? He says, I'm on Sultana, ya sheikh. Sultana, khush yamin, khush yasar. Make a left, make a U-turn at the roundabout at Sultana. Or you may go to Sultana yourself and meet him there and take him into the actual neighborhood yourself. You give someone's direction from that street. Then he says, وَجَبْرُ ذِبَابْ أَوَّلْ شَارِعْ عُثْمَانِ ibn Affan al-Uyun. And he talks about where the Mountain Dhibab is, the beginning of the street of Uthman ibn Affan al-Uyun, well-known street as well, Shari al-Uyun, and he says it's a branch from Sultana. And then he shows you here where it is located, and then it says Dar bin Najjar, the place of the tribe of An-Najjar. So, if you get an opportunity to buy the book or to go to the library, I don't know if it's available online for a free PDF or not, an atlas for the prophetic traditions from the 6 books of Hadith, Places and People by Dr. Shawki Abu Khalil. Thank you very much. Jazakumullahu khairan for watching. We look forward to your positive feedback.